Hello, friends. As we think about assurance of salvation, it's good to go back to actually thinking about our own salvation. How did that happen? How was I saved? How were you saved? And just thinking about for myself, I never had to be convinced that I was a sinner. I knew I was a sinner. I was a slave to my own self, to things that I knew were wrong, but I just did them anyway. I was on a path leading to death. No one had to convince me that I was a sinner. I knew that I displeased God, and I knew I wasn't living according to his law. In fact, I wasn't even living according to my law, what I thought was a good person or what a good person should do. I wasn't even living up to that. And that might be your experience before believing in Jesus, or even now, that you're a sinner. For some of us, we had to be convinced that we were sinners. We maybe thought that our good outweighed the bad, and compared to other people, I'm okay. So we had to realize that the standard was not our own standard, but God's. But no matter where we were before we believed in Jesus, what our thought process was, we all come to the point that belief in Jesus and belief in that God would forgive my sin is based on what he did, on what Jesus did, and what God did. And realizing that all the good things that I maybe could do or ever did do were not enough to pay the debt that I owed to God because of my sin. So we're going to have a quick group discussion on some verses in Romans 3. So Romans 3 verses 20 through 31. It's a bit of a long section, but it's really good section on how we became justified in God, in God's sight through Jesus. So it's a little wordy, so it may take some time to kind of chew through this together, but that's why we want to have the discussion. There's a few questions I'd like you to go through and discuss together for maybe the next 10 or 15 minutes. So as first read the verses together, Romans 3, 20 through 21. The first question is, what does it say about each of us in our natural state before belief in Christ? How does it describe us? Number 2, if we do good things, that is, if we obey his law, will that justify us? Why or why not? 3, what solution has been provided for this problem that I'm sinful and I can't justify myself even with good works? So what was the solution God provided? And then the 4th question, how does that payment that he made become applied to me? How does it become mine? So we're going to stop the video here and have 10 or 15 minutes of discussion, or however long it takes to go through those verses together, and come back to the video. Welcome back. I wish that I had been there to hear your discussion on these questions and to hear the things that you came up with as you answered those questions. Let's just kind of go through them real quickly. I wish so much that I could hear what you had to say, but on question 1 about what is our natural state before belief in Jesus, we see from verse 23 that we've all sinned. And not only have we sinned, we fall short of the glory of God. So the standard that God sets is not other people and their goodness, but his standard is up here, and we've all fallen short of that. There's no one who's reached that standard. So if we, number 2, if we do good things, that is, obey his law, does that justify us? Why or why not? It doesn't justify us. It says in verse 20 that the law, obedience to the law cannot justify me. For one thing, I can't do it perfectly. The law reveals my sin, but it doesn't take away my sin. And so my standard is never other people. My standard is God's law. So number 3, what the solution is that God provided to this problem of my sin and not being able to justify myself. So we see in verse 25 that God provided Jesus' sacrifice of blood to take away my sin. And then how does that payment become applied to me? It's by faith in Jesus. We see in verse 22, verses 24 to 25, it's a grace given by God through faith, which sounds very much like Ephesians 2, 8, 9, doesn't it? Verse 26, I'm justified by God through faith in Jesus. And then verses 27 to 30, again, the law of faith. He does the work. He gives the gift of grace through my belief in him. There's no work on my part, just belief. So there are many verses in the Bible about our salvation and justification before God, and that it's a gift of grace through faith. Many of you have memorized Ephesians 2, 8, 9 in the past, which is a really good summary of that idea that it's a gift. No one earns a gift. A gift is given, and none of us have enough good works to earn that. So John is going to now talk a little bit more about, as we go more into the assurance of this salvation after seeing that we are saved by belief in him.